Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote-unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp. And those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
It's called BC5, and the goal is a noble one: to try to get rid of provincial trade barriers in the wake of Trump tariffs. And while it was a major campaign promise from the newly elected Carney government, critics are now sounding the alarm on the ways this speedy new bill is putting the sovereignty of underrepresented groups at risk. So, whose voice is being pushed to the top of the argument? And who is just going to have to settle for what seems like the shorter end of the stick during a trade war? I'm Maria Kestane, and today on The Big Story, I'm talking to Sonia Aslam, 1130 NewsRadio Vancouver journalist, about the bill that's set to be passed sooner rather than later, and what it could mean for the future of Canadian trade in a time of unprecedented tariff whiplash from the U.S. Sonia, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Tell us a little bit about Bill C5 itself and the intent behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bill C5 has also been given the moniker by the federal Liberals as One Canadian Economy Act. Very wordy, so be prepared to hear a lot of that, folks. It gives the federal Liberals essentially the ability to fast-track major infrastructure and energy projects that it feels, and that's key, is in the country's interest. So whether or not you agree with it is besides the point. Is if the feds think, hey, we should do this, we're going to do this. So it's giving cabinet the right just to green light what it wants, just to put it bluntly. And that's obviously not going over well with a lot of groups because people like giving their input and a lot of people feel they have the right to give their input. So that includes political groups, Indigenous groups, environmental groups. And one of the biggest complaints so far on this is that this is a hit on democracy.
I mean, in a time of an ongoing trade war with who used to be our closest ally, on paper, Bill C5 seems like a step in the right direction, but it's been receiving a ton of backlash from various groups. Who is upset and why?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. When you hear about it, like, yeah, let's fast track projects and let's greenlight everything to make this country better. It sounds really good, but you're right. There's a lot of people who are upset. So, and again, anyone who feels like they're not being heard is, of course, going to be upset. So we've heard from First Nations leaders. And one of the things that really jumped out to me and that jumped out to them as well is they feel like, look, we've not always, as First Nations, had the best relationship with the federal government. We've put in a lot of work to get things to a good place with past prime ministers. Now, Mark Carney's been in office for not that long. The election was only at the end of April. And they feel that things have now gone backwards because what would happen with this bill, if approved and if it gets to where the feds want it, is that they could bypass getting the input of First Nations groups. And that's a problem for them, of course. So that's the issue, is that they're calling it disappointing and that they've quite frankly lost faith in the prime minister. And again, he's not been on the job all that long. That is one set of people who are very upset, and that's understandable. And the other is a long list of political parties. The NDP voted against it. The Bloc Québécois also against it. The Greens all voted this down on Monday when it came up in the House. The only party, besides Liberals, of course, who were on board were the Tories. And that's, remember, because the Liberals have a minority, they need somebody to back them up every time they put legislation on the table. The Tories are on board and the Liberals are like, hey, thanks for doing that. Everyone else is against it.
Right. So give us a little context here. When it comes to those Indigenous groups that are critiquing Bill C-5, what exactly are they critiquing here? What are they warning against when it comes to what this bill could do in terms of Indigenous governance and sovereignty over their land?
I think for them, it's more just we're not at the table. You're not asking our input. We don't have our say. And we have heard from one Indigenous leader in this country who says, should the bill go through, it is not going to be in effect on our territory. So already it's clashing. And that's a really hard thing to see when the bill hasn't even been given full approval. And already the backlash is so intense. It is so swift. So many people are upset, but for them, it's that you're not at the table. You're not having your opinions heard. You're not, as the federal government, if you're going to say, this is the project we want to do, we're going to just slam it through and everyone's going to get on board. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. We need to have everyone at the table. We need to touch base with all stakeholders. We need to have everyone's point of view seen, and that does include Indigenous groups. So for them, it's saying, like I said earlier, we've come all this way to have a good working relationship. And now that's taken 5 steps back because the federal government wants to take 1 step forward. That doesn't work.
In your opinion, what do you think is more of an issue to Canadians at this point, all Canadians, all groups that are critiquing it, the bill itself or the speed at which it's being passed at?
I think everyone is on board with what the bill is about. The bill is coming about now, just so everyone is up to speed on this, as we speak about speed, is the fact that the economy is trash right now. Everyone is struggling. The cost of living crisis is not getting better. We are currently embroiled in a trade and tariff war that we did not start and we did not ask for. So yes, the whole elbows up thing is the big theme that's been running through this country from coast to coast all year. And that's why this has come about, is we need to find a way to get projects, get energy projects, infrastructure, get things going to really build up and protect our economy so we are protected from outside threats meaning the US and a very obviously uncooperative White House administration. But the way you're going about it is what's upsetting a lot of people. The bill has come about, we're going to quickly rush it through, and then it's going to get done and everyone's going to be happy, is sort of the mindset and the feeling that people are getting from the federal Liberals, which if you're on the other side of things, you're going, well, no, you didn't even ask me my opinion. And if you're going to approve a bunch of projects, there's a whole host of consequences. There has never been a project proposed in any province or territory in this country that doesn't have a side effect. There are environmental concerns. There are, noise issues, traffic. Different groups have different takes on things. If none of that is being assessed when you just start green lighting everything, it doesn't work. I think the intention is, like your heart is in the right place as the feds, but you have to go through the process to make sure what you're doing is being done correctly. Because I can guarantee you, if there are holes and loopholes and issues in this legislation and it is quickly approved, what we're going to end up seeing is a bunch of court challenges to projects that are approved down the road. So if the goal is we don't want delays, we don't want to hold things up in all these approval processes, we just want things to be, yes, 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 yes. Well, down the road, there's going to be a bunch of no's, and that's going to be an even bigger problem.
You also mentioned earlier on the wording of the bill itself that people are finding a bit of a problem with. I think it was, you said that whatever the government deemed was necessary to fast track. Is that kind of what you said in terms of the subjectivity?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's fast tracking major infrastructure and energy projects that the government feels is in the national interest. So if they say, here's project, X, this is what we're going to do it. Well, hang on. Again, you need to get everyone's take. You can't just start approving everything because you want to do it. Life just doesn't work that way. You can't just do whatever you want when you want it because, it feels good or you think it's best. There are consequences. There are ramifications. There are things to consider and think about. And that's what's kind of missing here.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles Mackenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
It's the July 4th sale at Bray & Scarf, going on now with huge savings throughout the store. Save up to 40% on GE Profile and Cafe appliances. Or step up to luxury with free installation on select Monogram appliances. Special financing is available. Shop local and save this July 4th at Bray & Scarf. Visit any of our convenient locations or go to brayandscarf.com, where it doesn't cost more to get more.
You know, one of the arguments heard in support of the bill was that the push for breaking down interprovincial trade barriers was actually a major campaign promise from the Carney government, which, you know, the majority of Canadians were ultimately in favor of since they voted him in. Do you think that holds any weight against the criticism?
It does and it doesn't. I totally understand, again, where the Prime Minister is coming from. The country and its sovereignty is being threatened. It has been for months. And now it's come to a head where the election is over. We need to take action. We don't know when a trade deal is going to be struck with the U.S. We can't keep waiting. We need to figure this out. Like, urgency is being felt. The desperation is really being felt, which is great. But the way you go about fixing all these issues is where the problem lies. I do understand the patriotism that you were just mentioning. But again, the issue isn't the bill itself. It's not the fast tracking of projects. Everyone is on board with let's get the economy going. We can all benefit from that. But the way you're just trying to quickly get this done without asking anyone is the issue. And I think that's probably where wires are getting crossed with the public and with a number of groups is it's not the bill, it's the way you're going about it. That's where there needs to be more separation and then an understanding of what is our goal as a country. The goal is to help the economy. We need to get things going in the right direction. And to the Prime Minister's point, to protect the economy from outside threats, I get it. But you need to make sure you're doing it in a way that everyone is having their say. And again, to the, to what First Nations leaders were saying, we need a seat at the table.
So we've seen similar legislation here in Ontario, and in BC. Are the concerns similar in terms of doing away with the due process aspect of it?
Absolutely. I think people in both provinces see that there is a lack of democracy. So in Ontario, it's Bill 5. It grants the province the same thing, the ability to speed up major projects. And the idea is that they can do it while reducing delays, according to them, and doubling up on any approval processes. But again, the way you're going about it is the issue. And the critics are saying the same thing. Did you get everyone's opinion? Because if you didn't, you can't just start granting projects left, right, and center without everyone having their say. In BC, not to do a little social studies background here, but in BC, it is Bill 15. It has been incredibly controversial. The legislation was passed in the legislature in May, and it came down to a tie-breaking vote, which is very, very rare. So it came down to a tie-breaking vote by the speaker. And same thing, it's a piece of legislation that gives the province full power to fast-track and approve projects. And again, the concern is very similar, is that if you're going to forego consultation with everyone, it doesn't work. That includes First Nations. And they can do it without potentially doing checks and balances for environmental assessments. And then that's where we come back to, well, there are side effects to that. You can't, again, just slam through projects wherever you want across the country and then hide behind, well, it's good for the economy and, Donald Trump's really mean to us, so we have to do this. You have to make sure that the processes that are supposed to be in place are actually followed, and they're in place for a reason. This is how a democracy works. This is how this nation works. You have to make sure everyone is on board. And even if they don't agree with a project, that's okay. But you still need to make sure you're getting input. When no voices are being heard and it's just the Liberals doing what they want, that is going to be a problem.
Right. So let's say this bill gets passed. What What do you expect those opposition groups to maybe do in response? Do you see protests in the future? Do you see any, perhaps any legal action being taken against it?
I mean, the issue with legal action, and we've covered this both as journalists a number of times, is often when you see a situation like this, is it is very difficult to launch legal action in cases like this, especially once something is approved and through the Senate and it's, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But it's a very long process to snake its way through the justice system, which is notoriously slow as a snail. And it's very costly. And again, it's not so much that, and I do want to underline this for our audience, is it's not the goal of the bill. Everyone is on board, including First Nations groups, with we want the economy to be as strong as possible. We want funding and we want problems fixed, whether it's housing or addiction, it doesn't matter. We need the government to fix the economy, but it's the way you're doing it. So I would be surprised if there was legal action. I can't see that from, say, the federal NDP or the Bloc Québécois or any kind of party like that. And if an outside group wants to do it, an environmental group, for example, I would be hard-pressed to see this make its way through the court in a timely manner that you would actually see any difference.
Well, obviously, this is a fast-tracked process. So, the next steps of Bill C5 is going to look a little different compared to the process of how other bills are passed through the House of Commons. But in terms of this bill right now, what are the next steps in terms of getting it fully passed?
Yeah, it needs to go to the Senate. And I do want to underscore again that the issue is timing, because usually when a bill is, proposed, this is the motion, we're going to talk about it, there's not a lot of time for debate. There's not a ton of time to go through every single line to make sure, is this the right thing that we're doing? Does it work for everyone? Does it work for the country? Is it in everyone's best interest? The time is of the essence, because we are being threatened by the U.S., and we are facing threats from, if you are the Liberals, a bunch of groups across the country who aren't happy with us right now. But the federal MPs are set to be adjourned for the summer until the fall sitting in September as of today, Friday. And for the Senate, they are in a very similar schedule, which will be the following week. So things need to move very quickly if this is going to get pushed through. And the idea is that everyone is adjourned, and this can hopefully, again, if you're the Liberals, get done by Canada Day. To your point earlier, that is the target goal. Prime Minister Mark Carney has said a number of times that interprovincial trade barriers have to come down, and they will come down, according to him, on July 1st. And this bill is a part of that. It will help break down a lot of the barriers already that are up. So timing is strange because there's not a lot of debate. No one's really does anyone have time to go through everything? And then everyone's adjourned for the summer. And no one, it's hard pressed again to find MPs back in session unless they're recalled on an emergency basis. And I don't also see that happening. I see them trying to figure this out in the next little bit and then being done with it. And then everyone is adjourned for the summer, and we'll see everyone in September.
All right. Well, we'll be following along closely to see just how fast this bill gets passed. Sonia Aslam, 1130 News Radio Vancouver journalist, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you.
That was The Big Story. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode by emailing us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. You can find us on the Seeker app or on all your favorite podcast players. Please rate, review, follow, and share. I'm Maria Kestane. Thanks for listening.
It's the July 4th sale at Bray & Scarf, going on now with huge savings throughout the store. Save up to 40% on GE Profile and Cafe appliances. Or step up to luxury with free installation on select Monogram appliances. Special financing is available. Shop local and save this July 4th at Bray & Scarf. Visit any of our convenient locations or go to brayandscarf.com, where it doesn't cost more to get more.